Welcome back to the Bookish Wolf. I'm Josh, this is Freya, and today we are going to be talking about The Warbler by Sarah Beth Durst. This is a book that had me all over the place, changing my mind about what's happening between each chapters. I try to take notes between each chapter, between the characters, my thoughts. Every time I thought I had the mystery figured out, the book would say, nope, check this out. And I'd be right back to where I started, not knowing what to think. My thought process most of the time was, is there actually a curse? It's definitely an illness. It's probably magic. He's a vampire. She's a tree. I spent most of the book trying to answer those questions, and in the end, I still don't know what to think. Let's get into it. So for the summary of this book, we start by hearing from Elisa that her mother died and turned into a tree. The story follows Elisa, a young woman who spent her entire life on the move. Ever since she was a child, her mother, Lori, would pack up and leave every 10 months. New apartment, new school, new town. Then they would do it all over again. Somewhere else, some new place. The reason was because their family was cursed. According to Lori, the mom, the women in their family can't stay in one place too long. If they do, they slowly begin to turn into a tree. After Lori dies, Elisa continues living the same way. She avoids attachments, she avoids putting down roots, and leaves relationships before they become too serious. At the beginning of the book, she's leaving Tyler, her boyfriend, the longest relationship she's ever had, because staying feels more dangerous than leaving. Elisa eventually arrives in Greensboro, Massachusetts. It's a place that she has on a list of interesting or unique places she's always wanted to go, hoping to find answers to her curse. Greensboro was always going to be and should have been a temporary stop. But of course, instead she finds a town filled with mystery. After moments of just getting off the bus, a woman grabs Elisa on the sidewalk, begs her for help, and then runs into traffic and gets hit by a van, and later claims none of it happened. There's a bookstore owner named Owen. He becomes Elisa's first real friend in years. Also, there are three blue-haired women who seem to know everything about everyone in town. Eventually, the deeper Elisa digs into her family history, the more she discovers that her mother may have lied to her. Through old newspapers, yearbooks, graveyards, conversations with longtime residents, Elisa learns that both her mother and her grandmother lived in Greensboro far longer than their 10-month limit. The story, though, alternates between timelines like every other book I've been reading so far. In the present, Elisa is trying to uncover the truth about her family. There's two past timelines. One is Rose, her grandmother, who dreamed of traveling the world but instead settled down in Greensboro and spent much of her life wondering what could have been. And in her mother's chapters, Lori's, we see a woman so afraid of being trapped by the same regrets that she spends her entire life running. We see some of Elisa's childhood and a lot of Lori's fears of becoming trapped like her mother. As the three timelines begin connecting, though, Elisa starts questioning everything she believes. One, is the curse real? Two, was her mom actually protecting her? Three, why can't some people leave Greensboro? And what role does a mysterious three-headed statue hidden in these woods play in all of it? The more answers Elisa finds, the stranger that mystery becomes. So here are the things we liked about the book. The mystery absolutely carried this book. For most of the novel, I was convinced there was actually no curse. Every time something supernatural happened, there seemed to be a perfectly reasonable explanation that went with it. The bark on Elisa's arms, maybe it was a curse, maybe it was just a scab. When Elisa starts talking about feeling sap thickening inside of her or struggling to breathe, it often sounded more like anxiety or panic attacks, more than a magical curse. I've had some of those symptoms, so that's what just popped into my head. The more I learned about Lori, the more I started wondering if she had spent years convincing herself that the curse was real. The more I learned about Lori, the mom, the more I started wondering if she had spent years convincing herself that the curse was real. One scene that we walked into was when Elisa remembers finding her mother bleeding in the kitchen after the bark growing from her arm was cut off. Elisa sees the moment as proof, but later we learn that Lori had developed cancer. At that point, I started wondering if Elisa was remembering a real event through the lens of a story her mother had spent years telling her. Lori had told Elisa about a version of how the cow jumped over the moon, and how the cow was jumping over the moon and the moon cursed the cow from ever jumping over it. And the moon cursed the cow, saying if it would jump over the moon again, it would get stuck. So the cow had the fear of not jumping over the moon, even though it didn't know if the moon would actually curse it or not. But the cow just never did it. And so we see that Elisa always kept that story in her mind. So a lot of the things that happen may have been seen through that lens of the fear of the curse. Now back to the present. There were these 3 blue-haired women. They know things that they probably shouldn't know. They seem to be guiding Elisa towards answers without ever actually giving her the answers. At one point, they surrounded Elisa in the coffee shop and gave her directions to Allison's house, who is the same girl that grabbed Elisa and ran into the street and got hit by a van. During that scene was just weird, and it was a bit creepy. In my notes, I wrote that they reminded me of the Fates from the Hercules movie, the Disney one. The book eventually starts referring to the 3 blue-haired ladies as mythical trios throughout history. They always change their names when they're introducing themselves to people. Every person in town doesn't know their real names. I almost wish the book hadn't told us that. That was part of the fun of trying to figure out who they were. Another thing I liked was the book would immediately throw something at me that made me question everything all over again. Allison was hit by a truck, then she's fine. Hours later, she appears much younger than she should be. She knows things she shouldn't know. At one point, I became convinced Owen was a vampire. Then I remembered he was standing in the sun almost the entire book. And so I abandoned that theory. The character that made me most suspicious that something was up was Cora. The more we learned about her, the less I trusted her. Cora is Allison's mom, who is 90. So this is where things get hard for me to follow. And it's part of the mystery. Cora is Allison's mother. Allison is the same age as Elisa. However, Allison is seen in yearbooks with Elisa's mother, Lori. So the more I learned about Cora, the less I trusted her. Elisa shows her photographs of Rose, her grandmother, and she acted as she barely recognized her. Then there were these birds. Cora constantly talks about protecting them, keeping them safe, giving them a better life, but she never lets them go. The moment she said that the birds were safer in the cages than they would be in the wild, I knew something was up, because she said that she brought in the birds to rehabilitate them, but never released them back to the wild. Things I didn't like about this book. The timelines jumped around. At first it was a little bit confusing. Eventually you kind of get used to it. But sometimes I would get so invested in Elisa's story, and then suddenly we would be back 30 years into the past. Then just as I got invested in Rose's story, we would have to jump back to Elisa. By the end, I definitely understood why structure was necessary. But while reading it, it just felt frustrating because I just wanted to know what happened in one timeline. I also wish that the mystery of the 3 women had remained a little more mysterious. I think I would have preferred a little more subtlety there with it. So my final thoughts on this book is it kind of confirms magic is real. There were some wishes taken care of that were towards a 3-headed statue, which again references the 3 ladies, but we never know if the connection of the statues is of the ladies. We know that the curse is real. I think, maybe, we don't know. Like, I was so confused at the end. Maybe the curse is real. It seems like it is, but at the same time, it doesn't come out and say it is. We see her talking to a tree that she thinks is her mom, but the tree isn't responding back. So the point of the Warbler, it doesn't really matter if it's about magic. The main idea is it's about people being trapped. Rose wanted freedom, but felt trapped by expectations. Lori became so afraid of repeating her mother's mistakes that she trapped herself. Elisa inherited all of the fear. Cora convinced herself that protecting people was more important than letting them choose for themselves. So even though the book kind of answered the supernatural mystery, we felt that the emotional story was more interesting. Overall, we gave this book about an 8 out of 10. I definitely enjoyed this book. It was one of the faster reads that I read. It was one of those books I definitely thought about well after I read it. If you end up reading it, please let me know, is the curse real or not? I still don't know. But until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you.